There was someone in my living room. Someone who wasn't me. It was late at night when I finally reviewed the footage from the hidden cameras I'd installed. My hands trembled as I clicked play, scanning through hours of mundane activity. Emily walking around, cleaning, scrolling through her phone. Then suddenly he appeared. A man. Tall, confident, wearing a leather jacket. He didn't sneak in, he strolled in like he owned the place. And Emily? She greeted him with a smile that made my blood run cold. I froze, staring at the screen. Who was he? What was he doing in my house? Why did they look so comfortable together? The video played on, revealing moments that shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Their laughter, the way she leaned into him, the casual intimacy between them, it was unbearable to watch. Betrayal burned in my chest, but beneath the anger was something worse. Confusion. How could she do this? To me? To us? I closed the laptop, my mind racing. Did she think I'd never find out? Or was she planning to tell me herself someday? One thing was certain, I needed answers. But confronting her now would only make things worse. So I waited, watched more footage, gathered evidence. Each new clip tightened the knot in my stomach, pulling me deeper into a nightmare I couldn't escape. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and obsession. I couldn't focus on anything else. Not work, not conversations with friends, not even the kids' soccer games. All I could think about was the man in the footage. Who was he? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what was Emily hiding from me? I kept reviewing the recordings, searching for clues. Each new clip revealed something more damning than the last. One afternoon, I watched as Emily handed him a cup of coffee, their fingers brushing just a little too long. Another evening, they sat close on the couch, laughing at some private joke. It was clear they shared a connection, one that didn't include me. But it wasn't just their interactions that haunted me. It was the timing. He always came over when I was at work, slipping in and out like a ghost. Had she planned it that way? Was she counting on me never finding out? Every detail felt like a punch to the gut. The leather jacket he wore became a symbol of my betrayal, a constant reminder of his presence in our home. I started noticing things around the house, too. A stray gym bag tucked behind the couch. An unfamiliar water bottle left on the counter. Small signs that pointed to his frequent visits. One day, I almost got caught. Emily walked into the living room while I was adjusting one of the cameras, pretending to dust the bookshelf. She gave me a strange look but didn't say anything. "What are you doing?" she asked casually, her tone light but probing. "Just cleaning," I replied, forcing a smile. My heart raced as she glanced around the room, her eyes lingering on the corner where the camera was hidden. For a moment, I thought she suspected something. But then she shrugged and walked away, leaving me alone with my guilt and my growing anger. The tension between us became unbearable. Conversations felt forced, filled with unspoken accusations. I wanted to confront her, to scream at her for what she'd done. But every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I bottled up my emotions, letting them fester until they consumed me. By the end of the week, I had pieced together enough evidence to confirm my worst fears. His name was Ethan. They met at the gym, a place I hadn't stepped foot in for months because of my hectic work schedule. Their relationship had started innocently enough, or so she later claimed. But innocence was the last word I'd use to describe what I saw on those tapes. Each revelation deepened my sense of betrayal. This wasn't just an affair. It was a violation of everything we'd built together. Our home, the sanctuary we created for our family, had become a stage for her lies. And yet, despite the overwhelming proof, part of me still hoped I was wrong. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe this wasn't what it looked like. But deep down, I knew better. The truth was staring me in the face, undeniable and brutal. Now, all that remained was the confrontation. I rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times, imagining every possible outcome. Would she deny it? Cry? Beg for forgiveness? Or would she admit everything, confirming my suspicions once and for all? Whatever happened, I knew one thing for sure. The life I thought I had was over. And there was no turning back. The final piece of the puzzle came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing footage from the previous week when I saw it, the moment that confirmed everything. Ethan walked into the living room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Emily greeted him with a smile, and they sat down together on the couch. At first, it seemed like any other interaction. They talked, laughed, leaned closer, but then something happened that made my stomach drop. Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It was such a simple gesture, but it carried so much meaning. Intimacy, familiarity, love. And then, as if to twist the knife further, they kissed. Not a quick peck or a fleeting brush of lips. It was slow, deliberate, filled with emotion. The kind of kiss reserved for lovers, not strangers. I paused the video, staring at the frozen image on the screen. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown relationship happening right under my nose. In my home, with my wife. For hours, I sat there, replaying the clip over and over again. Each time felt like reliving the betrayal anew. Who was this man? How could she do this to me? To us? Did she even care about the vows we made? The promises we shared? By the time evening rolled around, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers now. When Emily came home later that night, humming softly to herself, I was waiting for her in the kitchen. She froze when she saw me sitting at the table, laptop open in front of me. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice hesitant. Instead of answering, I turned the screen toward her. The footage played automatically, showing Ethan walking into the house, handing her coffee, leaning in for that damning kiss. Her face went pale as she watched, her eyes widening in shock, or maybe guilt. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice low but sharp. Emily didn't respond immediately. She stood there, frozen, tears welling up in her eyes. Finally, she whispered, "Daniel, I can explain." "Explain what?" I shot back, slamming my fist on the table. "That you've been cheating on me? That you brought him here, to our home, while I was working my ass off to provide for this family." "It's not like that," she pleaded, sinking into a chair. "It's complicated." "Complicated," I repeated, incredulous. "You think cheating makes things complicated? Try explaining it to our kids someday. Or better yet, try explaining it to yourself when you look in the mirror." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. "His name is Ethan," she admitted finally. "We met at the gym a few months ago. It started as friendship. Then, it turned into something more. And you thought it was okay to bring him here?" I demanded. "To betray me in our own home? I never meant for it to happen," she cried. "I love you. I really do. But I felt so lonely, Daniel. You're always working, always distracted. I needed someone who could be there for me." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Lonely? Is that how she justified this? "So you decided to cheat instead of talking to me?" I asked bitterly. "Instead of trying to fix whatever problems we have?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, congratulations," I spat. "You succeeded." The confrontation spiraled from there, each word cutting deeper than the last. She begged for forgiveness, promising to end things with Ethan and work on our marriage. But her apologies felt hollow, meaningless. How could I trust her now? As the argument dragged on, I realized something painful. This wasn't just about Ethan. It was about us, the cracks in our relationship that had been there long before he entered the picture. Miscommunication, neglect, resentment. But no matter how much I wanted to believe we could fix it, the damage was done. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. And I wasn't sure I could ever look at her the same way again. The days after the confrontation were a haze of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. I couldn't stay in the same house as Emily, not with the memories of her betrayal haunting every corner. So, I packed a bag and left, moving into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine. a space free from reminders of what we'd lost. At first, I told myself it was temporary, a cooling off period. Maybe, just maybe, we could salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. But deep down, I knew better. Some wounds run too deep to heal, and some betrayals leave scars that never fade. Sleep eluded me those first few nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Their laughter, their touches, their kiss. The image played on a loop in my mind, refusing to let me rest. During the day, I threw myself into work, using long hours at the office as a distraction. But even there, I couldn't escape the ache in my chest. Friends noticed the change in me. "You look like hell," Mark said one evening when we met for drinks. "What's going on?" I hesitated, debating whether to tell him the truth. Finally, I confessed everything, the cameras, the recordings, Ethan. By the time I finished, I was gripping my glass so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Damn," Mark muttered, shaking his head. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to forgive her, to try and fix things. But another part feels like walking away is the only way to protect myself. Mark nodded thoughtfully. "It's not an easy decision. Just make sure you're doing what's best for you, not what you think she wants or expects." His words stuck with me. For so long, I'd put Emily's needs ahead of my own, working late to provide for the family, sacrificing personal time to keep the household running smoothly. But where had that gotten me? Alone in a cramped apartment, nursing a broken heart. To cope, I started seeing a therapist. Talking about my feelings felt strange at first, but slowly, it helped me untangle the web of emotions I'd been drowning in. I realized that while Emily's actions were unforgivable, I also bore some responsibility for the state of our marriage. My constant absence, my failure to communicate openly, it had created a void she tried to fill with someone else. Still, understanding didn't mean excusing. No matter how lonely she claimed to feel, nothing justified bringing another man into our home. That betrayal cut deeper than anything else because it wasn't just about me. It was about us, our vows, our promises, everything we'd built together. As weeks turned into months, I began to rebuild pieces of myself. I joined a gym, started cooking again, reconnected with old friends. Small steps, but they made a difference. For the first time in years, I felt like I was rediscovering who I was outside of being a husband or provider. Emily tried reaching out occasionally. Texts, emails, even showing up unannounced at my apartment. "We need to talk," she'd say, her voice trembling. But I couldn't face her, not yet. Not until I figured out what I truly wanted. Did I still love her? Yes. Could I trust her again? Probably not. And without trust, what kind of future could we possibly have? By the time months had passed, I accepted the reality of our situation. Emily and I weren't the same people anymore. Too much had happened. Too many lines crossed. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for sure. I deserved better than living in the shadow of betrayal. The moment Daniel walked out the door, I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt suffocating, its silence pressing down on me like a weight. Every room reminded me of him, of us, of everything I'd thrown away. At first, I convinced myself it was temporary. He needed space, time to cool off. Surely, once the initial shock wore off, he'd come back. We could fix this together. But as days turned into weeks, his absence became a glaring reminder of how much I'd lost. And worse, how much I'd betrayed. I replayed that night over and over in my mind. The confrontation, the footage, the look in his eyes when he realized the truth. It wasn't just anger I saw. It was hurt, betrayal, disappointment. I had shattered the man I loved, the father of my children, the person who meant more to me than anyone else in the world. And for what? A fleeting connection with Ethan? Thinking about him now made me sick to my stomach. What had started as harmless flirtation at the gym had spiraled out of control, consuming me until I forgot who I was, or who I wanted to be. Ethan wasn't the answer to my loneliness. He was a distraction, a band-aid over a wound that ran far deeper. But admitting that didn't make things better. If anything, it made them worse. because now I had to live with the consequences of my actions. Not just the pain I'd caused Daniel, but the damage I'd done to our family. Our kids noticed the change immediately. "Where's Dad?" Emma asked one evening during dinner, her voice small and hesitant. "He's working late," I lied, unable to meet her gaze. "Doesn't he love us anymore?" Liam chimed in, his innocent question cutting straight through me. "Yes," I said quickly, choking back tears. "Of course he does. We're just figuring some things out." But even as I spoke the words, I knew they weren't enough. Kids are perceptive. They sense tension, sadness, uncertainty. No matter how hard I tried to shield them from the fallout, they were caught in the crossfire. And it was my fault. To cope, I threw myself into therapy. Sitting in that tiny office week after week, I began unraveling the tangled mess of emotions inside me. Why had I cheated? Was it really loneliness or something deeper? Fear of intimacy? Resentment toward Daniel? Or simply my own inability to communicate what I needed? Slowly, painfully, I started piecing together answers. Yes, I'd felt neglected. Yes, Daniel's constant work schedule left me feeling invisible. But instead of addressing those feelings head-on, I buried them under excuses and distractions. And when Ethan came along offering attention and validation, I let myself believe it was okay, that I deserved it somehow. But I didn't deserve it. Cheating wasn't a solution. It was a symptom of bigger issues I'd ignored for too long. Now I was paying the price. I tried reaching out to Daniel multiple times, hoping to explain myself, to apologize properly. "Please," I begged during one phone call, my voice breaking. "Can we talk? I miss you. I miss us." "I don't know if there's an us anymore," he replied, his tone cold but tinged with sadness. His words crushed me. For so long, I'd taken him for granted, assuming he'd always be there no matter what. But now, faced with the possibility of losing him forever, I realized how much I truly loved him, and how badly I'd messed up. As months passed, I accepted the harsh reality. Daniel might never forgive me. Maybe he shouldn't. Some mistakes are too big to overlook, too damaging to repair. All I could do was focus on becoming a better version of myself. For my kids, for Daniel, and most importantly, for me. Because if I couldn't fix my marriage, at least I could try to fix myself. Months turned into a year, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. For both of us. Daniel and I weren't friends. Exactly. But we'd found a way to co-parent peacefully for the sake of Emma and Liam. They still asked about why their parents lived apart. But over time, they seemed to accept it as normal. Kids are resilient like that. They adapt, even when the world around them feels uncertain. For me, the past year had been a journey of self-reflection. Therapy taught me to confront the reasons I'd let things spiral so far out of control. My loneliness, my inability to communicate, my fear of vulnerability. I started journaling too, pouring my guilt and regrets onto paper in hopes of finding clarity. Slowly, I began to rebuild pieces of myself, the parts I'd lost in the chaos of our marriage. Though I'll never know exactly what went through Daniel's mind during those quiet nights alone, I could see the changes in his demeanor when we met for the kids' events or school pickups. He was softer now, more grounded, like someone who'd finally faced the hardest truths about himself and about us. As for Daniel, he learned to embrace the uncertainty of starting over. Moving out didn't magically fix everything, though. It came with its own set of challenges, especially when it came to co-parenting Emma and Liam. But slowly, painfully, he began to rediscover parts of himself he'd forgotten about. The hobbies he used to enjoy, the friendships he'd neglected, the dreams he'd put on hold while focusing on our family. Dating again opened his eyes to new possibilities, not just romantically but personally. He realized he didn't have to be defined by his past mistakes or by my betrayal. One evening, after tucking Emma and Liam into bed during one of his weekends with them, he sat on the couch flipping through old photo albums. There were pictures of us smiling at our wedding, holding newborn Emma in the hospital, laughing on family vacations. Looking at those memories didn't hurt as much anymore. Instead, they reminded him of how far we'd come. Not just from each other, but within ourselves. I thought about Daniel often, wondering if he ever looked back on our life together and felt the same bittersweet nostalgia. Did he regret installing those cameras? Did he wish he'd confronted me sooner? Or never at all? Maybe. But dwelling on those questions wouldn't change anything. What mattered was the present, the choices we made every day to create better futures for ourselves and our children. In the end, neither of us got the fairy tale ending we once dreamed of. But maybe that wasn't the point. Life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about learning from it. And though Daniel and I took separate paths, we both emerged stronger. Two people who once loved deeply and lost painfully, but who refused to let that loss define us forever.